A music executive and community activist is accused of running a criminal empire in Los Angeles. Eugene Henley Jr. facing RICO charges.
For Eugene Henley Jr., also known as Big U. He's facing RICO charges, and the Department of Justice also accusing him of murdering an aspiring rapper in 2021.
What if I told you that one of hip-hop's most respected community leaders was secretly running a multi-million-dollar extortion empire that terrorized the entire West Coast rap scene for over 2 decades?
Facts alleged in the complaint paint a very different picture. It is one of a murderer, a thief, a liar, and a cheat.
What if I told you that this same man allegedly had explicit recordings of Nipsey Hussle that he used for blackmail, and even after Nipsey's tragic death, he continued extorting his family for millions in royalties? We're talking about Eugene Big U Henley, a man who presented himself as a reformed gang member helping kids stay out of trouble, while allegedly forcing rappers like Meek Mill, YG, and Mozzie to pay street taxes just to work in Los Angeles. This dude was so calculated that he turned charity work into a criminal front, using youth football programs and food drives to hide one of the most sophisticated extortion operations the FBI has ever investigated. But here's what's really twisted about this whole situation. Big U didn't just rob these artists for quick cash. According to federal investigators and leaked recordings, he was systematically destroying careers, manipulating business deals, and using compromising material to control some of hip-hop's biggest names. We're talking about a criminal enterprise that made millions by exploiting the very artists who trusted him for protection and guidance. The 107-page federal indictment against Big U reads like a crime thriller, with allegations of murder, racketeering, and a level of psychological manipulation that's almost impossible to believe. But the evidence is all there. Wiretapped phone calls, DNA evidence, financial records, and testimony from his own former associates who finally found the courage to speak out. So, if you want to understand how one man allegedly turned the entire LA rap scene into his personal ATM machine, how he used community respect to hide decades of criminal activity, and how the FBI finally brought down one of the most feared figures in West Coast hip-hop, then you need to stay until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about the music industry, street politics, and the true cost of success in hip-hop culture. To understand how Big U became the alleged puppet master of LA's rap scene, we gotta go back to where it all started, because this man's story is rooted in some of the most violent and chaotic times in American urban history. Eugene Henley Jr. was born in 1966, right in the middle of the civil rights movement, and his family was part of that great migration from the South to Los Angeles that would reshape the demographics of the West Coast forever. His parents originally came from Mississippi, where his family had experienced the brutal realities of Jim Crow segregation. They made a stop in Chicago, and this is where the story gets interesting. His father allegedly got connected with some serious street figures, including members of the almighty Black P. Stone Nation, one of the earliest and most powerful black street gangs in America. This early exposure to organized street politics would later influence how Big U approached building his own criminal empire. The family eventually settled in South Central LA, specifically around 81st and Hoover. Now, for those who don't know LA geography, this wasn't just any neighborhood. This was ground zero for what would become the most infamous gang culture in American history. We're talking about the exact area where the Crips were being formed in the late 1960s and early 1970s, founded by Raymond Washington and Stanley Tookie Williams. Big U grew up watching the transformation of his neighborhood from a working-class black community into a war zone. The Watts riots had happened just a year before he was born, and the aftermath left South Central in a state of economic devastation and social upheaval. Into this vacuum stepped the early gang formations, and young Eugene Henley was right there to witness and eventually participate in this historic shift. Big U's first gang affiliation wasn't directly with the Rolling 60s. He started with a smaller, more localized group called the Arlington Gang, or AG for short. This was a neighborhood clique centered around Arlington Avenue and Slauson, and it was led by Big U's cousin, a figure known as Chili Capone. This early experience taught Big U some crucial lessons about leadership, loyalty, and the economics of street life that would serve him throughout his criminal career. The Arlington Gang was eventually absorbed into the larger Rolling 60 neighborhood Crips as the gang structure became more organized and territorial. But Big U's time with the AG gave him something that many other gang members lacked: a deep understanding of how smaller, tight-knit criminal organizations could be more effective than large, unwieldy gangs. This knowledge would later inform how he structured his alleged extortion empire. During his teenage years in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Big U was already showing the traits that would make him so dangerous later on. Standing 6 feet 2 inches and built like a linebacker, he was physically intimidating, but more importantly, he had this natural charisma and intelligence that set him apart from other street dudes. While other gang members were focused on immediate gratification, quick sales, petty robberies, and neighborhood beefs, Big U was already thinking strategically about power and influence. The 1980s brought the crack epidemic to Los Angeles, and this period fundamentally changed both the nature of gang activity and Big U's position within the criminal hierarchy. Crack cocaine created unprecedented opportunities for profit, but it also brought unprecedented violence and federal attention to street gangs. Big U navigated this dangerous landscape with a combination of brutality and business acumen that would become his trademark. During this period, Big U was getting arrested regularly, charges ranging from robbery to attempted murder of a police officer. But here's what's really interesting: these charges rarely stuck. Looking back at court records and police reports from this era, there's a pattern of witnesses disappearing, evidence getting lost, and cases falling apart just before trial. This suggests that even in his early 20s, Big U was already learning how to manipulate the legal system and intimidate potential witnesses. The streets of LA in the 80s were absolutely wild, fam. We're talking about a level of violence that most people today can't even comprehend. The rolling 60s were involved in one of the longest and bloodiest gang wars in LA history with the 8 Trey Gangster Crips, a conflict that lasted for years and left hundreds dead. Big U not only survived this war but thrived in it, using the chaos to eliminate rivals and consolidate power within his own organization. One of the most infamous incidents from this period was a massive brawl at a Run DMC concert in Long Beach in August 1986. According to multiple witnesses, the Rolling 60s, led by Big U, attended this concert specifically to start a fight and establish their dominance over other gangs. The resulting violence injured dozens of people and caused the LA Palladium to cancel Run DMC's next scheduled concert out of fear of escalating gang tensions. This incident shows how Big U was already using high-profile events to send messages and build his reputation for extreme violence. In 1991, Big U's luck finally ran out when he got caught in a federal sting operation. The details of this case are absolutely wild. Big U and his crew attempted to rob 33 pounds of cocaine from what they thought was a drug dealer, but was actually an undercover federal agent. When the deal went down, Big U pulled a gun and tried to rob the fake plug, leading to his immediate arrest by federal agents who had been watching the entire operation. This should have been the end of Big U's story. He was hit with a 23-year federal sentence, which in the early 1990s meant he would likely serve the vast majority of that time. But even behind bars, Big U was building his legend and expanding his criminal education. Federal prison in the 1990s was like a graduate school for organized crime, and Big U took full advantage of the opportunity to learn from some of the most sophisticated criminals in the country. During his time inside, Big U met Michael Harry O. Harris, a powerful LA figure who allegedly played a key role in helping Suge Knight found Death Row Records. Harry O. was serving time for drug trafficking, but he was also a sophisticated businessman who understood how to move money through legitimate enterprises and build criminal organizations that could operate in both the legal and illegal worlds. The relationship between Big U and Harry O would prove crucial to Big U's later success in infiltrating the music industry. Big U also used his time in prison to build a network of contacts that extended far beyond Los Angeles. Federal prisons housed criminals from all over the country, and Big U formed relationships with gang leaders, drug traffickers, and white-collar criminals from coast to coast. These connections would later prove invaluable when he started expanding his operations beyond LA. Stories from Big U's prison years paint a picture of a man who was both feared and respected by other inmates. There are accounts of him running drug operations inside the prison, settling disputes between different gangs, and even knocking someone's eyeball out during a fight. Whether all these stories are true or not, they contributed to a legend that would serve Big U well when he returned to the streets. Big U ended up serving only 13 years of his 23-year sentence, getting released in 2004. This early release was allegedly the result of good behavior and participation in prison programs. But given what we now know about Big U's ability to manipulate systems and people, it's worth questioning whether there were other factors involved. When Big U hit the streets in 2004, the world had changed dramatically. Hip-hop was now a billion-dollar industry, and Los Angeles was at the center of it all. The internet was changing how music was distributed and consumed, and young artists had more opportunities than ever to build careers independently. But Big U saw something that other street figures missed. He realized that the real money wasn't in drugs anymore, it was in controlling the artists. The timing of Big U's release was perfect for what he wanted to accomplish. The Rolling 60s had grown during his incarceration and were now described by law enforcement as the largest black criminal street gang in the city of Los Angeles. Big U returned to find an organization that was larger and more powerful than when he left, but also more fragmented and in need of strong leadership. Instead of immediately jumping back into traditional street activities, Big U made a strategic decision that would define the rest of his criminal career. He decided to reinvent himself as a legitimate community leader while secretly using that position to build a more sophisticated and profitable criminal enterprise than anything he had operated before his incarceration. When Big U founded Developing Options in 2004, it appeared to be exactly what Los Angeles needed, a community organization run by a reformed gang member who understood the streets and wanted to help kids avoid the same mistakes he had made. The organization's mission statement was beautiful: to decrease gang activity and to empower the community to strive for a safer, thriving environment for our youth. But according to federal investigators, Developing Options was actually the headquarters of what they called Big U Enterprises, a sophisticated criminal organization that used the cover of community work to extort, rob, and intimidate anyone who got in their way. The genius of this setup was that it gave Big U access to funding, political connections, and most importantly, a reputation that made him virtually untouchable. The organization received over $2.3 million in funding from the city of Los Angeles through various grant programs. Big U personally drew hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary from these grants, money that was supposed to go toward community programs and gang intervention. But according to the federal indictment, much of this money was actually being used to fund criminal activities and personal expenses that had nothing to do with helping the community. Big U was incredibly smart about how he built the public image of Developing Options. He organized high-profile food drives that would attract media attention, providing thousands of meals to families in need. He set up youth football programs that gave kids alternatives to gang life, and he even coached some of these teams personally. He brought in celebrities and politicians for photo opportunities, creating a public relations machine that portrayed him as a pillar of the community. The Crenshaw Rams youth football team became one of Big U's most effective tools for building legitimacy. He didn't just coach these kids, he mentored them, helped them with their schoolwork, and provided them with equipment and opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Many of these young men went on to successful high school and college careers, and they genuinely credit Big U with changing their lives for the better. The crown jewel of Big U's legitimate facade was his son Deion Henley's success in professional football. Deion was everything Big U probably wished he could have been: talented, disciplined, and focused on achieving success through legitimate means. Big U coached Deion from a young age, and it was clear that he was determined to see his son succeed in ways that he never could. Deion's journey to the NFL wasn't easy. He faced the same temptations and pressures that derailed so many other young men from South Central LA. But with Big U's guidance and support, he stayed focused on football and academics. When Deion was eventually drafted by the LA Chargers, it represented a dream come true not just for him, but for his entire family and community. The success of Deion's NFL career gave Big U something that money couldn't buy: genuine respect and admiration from people who had no idea about his alleged criminal activities. When Big U attended NFL events as Deion's father, he was rubbing shoulders with team owners, coaches, and other players' families. These connections weren't just for show. They were tools he allegedly used to expand his criminal enterprise into new areas. Big U was incredibly proud of Deion's success, and there's no evidence that he ever tried to involve his son in any criminal activities. In fact, it seems like Big U went to great lengths to keep Deion away from the street life that had defined his own existence. This creates a fascinating contradiction in Big U's character. A man who was allegedly destroying other families while doing everything possible to protect and elevate his own. Big U's legitimate activities gave him access to celebrities and industry figures that most street criminals could never reach. Through his work with Developing Options and his son's NFL career, he built relationships with rappers, actors, athletes, and entertainment executives. These connections were crucial to his alleged extortion schemes because they gave him credibility and access that traditional street intimidation couldn't provide. One of Big U's most important early connections was with Suge Knight, the infamous founder of Death Row Records. When Big U was released from prison in 2004, Suge was dealing with his own legal problems, but he still had significant influence in the music industry. Suge took Big U under his wing, providing him with financial support and introducing him to key figures in the hip-hop world. The relationship with Suge Knight was educational for Big U in ways that would prove crucial to his later success. Suge had pioneered many of the intimidation and extortion tactics that Big U would later perfect. Suge showed Big U how to use the threat of violence to control artists, how to manipulate contracts and business deals, and how to present a legitimate front while operating criminal enterprises behind the scenes. Big U also built relationships with legitimate entertainment industry figures who had no idea about his alleged criminal activities. He attended industry events, participated in panel discussions about gang intervention, and even appeared in documentaries about hip-hop culture. These appearances helped establish him as an expert on street culture and gang politics, giving him a platform to influence how the industry dealt with these issues. In the later years of his career, Big U became a regular presence on podcasts and social media platforms. He appeared on shows like Drink Champs, The Breakfast Club, and various No Jumper episodes, always presenting himself as a reformed gang member who was now focused on helping his community. These media appearances served multiple purposes for Big U's alleged criminal enterprise. First, they helped maintain his public image as a legitimate community leader. Second, they allowed him to send subtle messages to potential victims and rivals about his power and influence. And third, they gave him a platform to normalize the concept of checking in and paying street taxes, making these extortion schemes seem like accepted parts of hip-hop culture. Big U was particularly effective at using social media to build his brand and intimidate potential victims. His Instagram account featured a carefully curated mix of community work, family photos, and subtle displays of wealth and power. He would post pictures from charity events alongside photos of expensive cars and jewelry, sending a clear message about his dual nature. The federal investigators who eventually built the case against Big U paid close attention to his media appearances and social media posts. According to the indictment, they used these public statements as evidence of his criminal activities, showing how Big U's own words and actions helped build the case against him. Before we dive into specific cases, it's crucial to understand the sophisticated system that Big U allegedly developed around the concept of checking in. This wasn't just random street robbery. It was a carefully orchestrated extortion scheme that exploited the legitimate security concerns of artists and industry figures visiting Los Angeles. The basic premise of checking in is that when rappers, athletes, or anyone with money comes to LA, they need to reach out to local gang leaders for protection. On the surface, this might seem reasonable. Los Angeles has a well-documented history of violence against visiting artists, and having local protection could genuinely prevent problems. But according to federal investigators, Big U perverted this system into a sophisticated extortion racket. The genius of Big U's approach was that he positioned himself as the ultimate authority on LA street politics. If you wanted to do business in the city, shoot music videos, perform at clubs, record in studios, or just visit safely, you had to go through him. He created a monopoly on street credibility and protection, and that monopoly always came with a price. Big U's organization allegedly used a multi-tiered approach to extortion. For smaller artists or less wealthy targets, the fee might be a few $1,000s and some promotional consideration. For major artists or athletes, the price could reach into the hundreds of thousands. And for those who refuse to pay, the consequences could be devastating: robbery, assault, or worse. The psychological aspect of this system was just as important as the financial component. Big U understood that fear was more powerful than actual violence. By building a reputation for extreme brutality and maintaining connections throughout the LA gang structure, he could control people without actually having to hurt them most of the time. The threat was usually enough. The relationship between Big U and Nipsey Hussle is one of the most complex and tragic stories in hip-hop history. It started as what appeared to be a genuine mentorship, with Big U helping a young artist navigate the dangerous waters of the LA rap scene. But according to multiple sources and federal investigators, it eventually became a nightmare of manipulation, extortion, and alleged blackmail that may have contributed to one of hip-hop's most devastating losses. Nipsey and Big U's relationship goes back to the early 2000s, when Nipsey was just starting to make a name for himself in the LA underground scene. Big U's nephew knew Nipsey and introduced them, and initially, it seemed like Big U was genuinely trying to help. He used his industry connections to get Nipsey a feature on a posthumous Tupac album, International, from the 2006 release Pac's Life. This was a huge break for Nipsey's career and established him as a serious artist in the eyes of the industry. For several years, the relationship appeared to be mutually beneficial. Big U provided Nipsey with protection and industry connections, while Nipsey's growing success reflected well on Big U's reputation as someone who could develop talent. Big U's unique music label released Nipsey's early mixtapes, including the Bullets Ain't Got No Name series that helped establish Nipsey's reputation in the streets. But according to multiple sources, including leaked phone conversations and federal court documents, there was a much darker side to this relationship. The allegations are that Big U had compromising recordings of Nipsey that he was using to control him. These alleged recordings were supposedly explicit in nature and could have destroyed Nipsey's reputation and credibility in the streets if they had been released. Hassan Campbell, a controversial YouTuber, released a recorded phone conversation where Wack 100 allegedly discusses these recordings in detail. In the conversation, you can hear someone saying they have all the footage and talking about how they've been saving his career by not releasing the material. The implications are absolutely devastating. That one of hip-hop's most respected figures was allegedly being blackmailed by someone he trusted. The alleged extortion wasn't just about money, it was about control. According to these sources, Big U used the threat of releasing these recordings to influence Nipsey's business decisions, his choice of collaborators, and even his personal relationships. This would explain some of the tensions that developed between Nipsey and Big U over the years, including the infamous diss track You Don't Have a Clue that Nipsey released in 2010. What makes the Nipsey situation even more heartbreaking is the allegation that the extortion didn't stop when he was murdered in 2019. According to the same sources who revealed the existence of the alleged recordings, Big U and his associates continued to pressure Nipsey's estate, specifically his partner Lauren London, to give up a significant portion of Nipsey's music royalties. Think about the psychological torture this represents. A woman who just lost the love of her life, who's trying to raise their children and preserve his legacy, allegedly being extorted by the same people who were supposed to be Nipsey's friends and mentors. The allegation is that Lauren London has remained relatively quiet about certain aspects of Nipsey's business dealings because she's afraid of what might be released if she speaks out. This would explain why, despite all the rumors and speculation about Big U's involvement in Nipsey's death, Lauren London has never publicly addressed these allegations. It would also explain why some of Nipsey's closest friends and associates have been reluctant to speak out against Big U, even after his arrest. The fear of retaliation, either through violence or the release of damaging material, has allegedly kept people silent for years. The federal indictment against Big U includes allegations that he and his associates claimed 30% of Nipsey's royalties after his death. If true, this means that they were profiting from the murder of someone they had allegedly been extorting for years. It's a level of callousness and greed that's almost impossible to comprehend. The Meek Mill incident, kidnapping in plain sight. According to Loose Cannon, one of Big U's former associates who later turned against him, the organization's extortion tactics sometimes escalated to outright kidnapping. The most shocking example he described involved rapper Meek Mill, who was allegedly grabbed at a Los Angeles nightclub and forced to pay a $50,000 ransom. Loose Cannon's account of this incident is chilling in its casual brutality. He claims that they identified Meek Mill at a club where he was performing, waited for him to arrive, and then physically grabbed him when he entered the venue. According to Loose Cannon, Meek's security team immediately fled when they realized what was happening, leaving the rapper completely vulnerable. The alleged kidnappers then forced Meek to call his boss, Rick Ross, and demand that $50,000 be delivered immediately. Loose Cannon claims that Ross complied with the demand, having the money delivered to a location in Crenshaw within hours. Only after the payment was received was Meek allegedly released unharmed. Now, Meek Mill has publicly denied this story, and Loose Cannon isn't exactly the most reliable narrator. But the fact that this story came out during a federal investigation and that Loose Cannon was willing to admit to what amounts to kidnapping and extortion on a podcast suggests there might be some truth to it. The pattern described, identifying a target, creating a situation where they feel threatened, and then demanding payment for their release, matches other alleged activities described in the federal indictment. What makes this story particularly disturbing is how casual and routine Loose Cannon makes it sound. He describes the kidnapping like it was just another day at the office, suggesting that this type of activity was a regular part of Big U's organization's operations. The fact that it allegedly happened at a public venue with security cameras and witnesses around shows how confident they were that no one would report them to authorities. The situation with YG demonstrates how Big U allegedly used LA's complex gang politics to control artistic collaborations and extract payments from artists who wanted to work together across gang lines. YG is from Treetop Pyru, a blood set, while Nipsey represented the Rolling 60 Crips. Traditionally, these groups would be enemies, making any collaboration between their members potentially dangerous. When Nipsey brought YG into Rolling 60's territory to shoot the Stitches Ain't Snitches music video in 2011, it created a significant problem according to gang protocol. Big U allegedly wasn't happy about a blood rapper being in Crip territory without proper clearance, and he used this violation as an opportunity to assert his authority and extract payment. The allegation is that YG had to pay a substantial fee and get explicit permission from Big U to work with Nipsey and film in Rolling 60's territory. This wasn't just about money, it was about establishing Big U's role as the ultimate authority on LA street politics. By forcing YG to pay and acknowledge his authority, Big U was sending a message to other artists about who really controlled the LA rap scene. The situation escalated when Nipsey had to physically fight multiple Rolling 60s members just to defend his decision to work with YG. This shows how Big U's alleged extortion schemes created violence and conflict even within gang families. Nipsey was a respected member of the Rolling 60s, but Big U's authority was apparently so absolute that even Nipsey had to fight his own gang members to work with the artists he chose. Later, when YG reciprocated by bringing Nipsey to Treetop Pyru territory to film the I'm a Thug video, it created another opportunity for extortion. The fact that both artists had to navigate these complex political situations and pay various fees just to collaborate shows how Big U's system was stifling creativity and forcing artists to pay tribute for basic professional activities. Mozzie's case demonstrates how Big U's influence allegedly extended far beyond Los Angeles, reaching artists from other cities who wanted to work in the LA market or collaborate with LA-based artists. Mozzie is from Sacramento, but as his career grew and he started working with LA artists, he allegedly had to deal with Big U's organization. The pattern was always the same. If you wanted to work in LA or with LA artists, you had to pay the tax. It didn't matter if you were from out of town, if you had your own crew, or if you had no connection to LA gang politics. Big U's organization allegedly controlled access to the LA rap scene, and that access always came with a price. For artists like Mozzie, this created an impossible situation. Sacramento has its own complex gang politics and street culture, but none of that mattered when it came to working in Los Angeles. Artists had to essentially pay tribute to two different systems, their home city's street politics and Big U's LA-based extortion network. The expansion of Big U's influence beyond LA shows how sophisticated his organization had become. They weren't just controlling local artists, they were essentially taxing the entire West Coast rap scene. Any artist who wanted to achieve major success had to deal with Los Angeles at some point, whether for recording, video shoots, industry meetings, or performances, and dealing with Los Angeles meant dealing with Big U. What made Big U's alleged criminal enterprise so effective wasn't just the threat of violence, it was his sophisticated understanding of psychology and reputation management. Big U realized early in his career that actual violence was expensive, risky, and often counterproductive. Fear, on the other hand, was cheap, effective, and could be maintained indefinitely with minimal effort. The federal indictment reveals wiretapped conversations where Big U allegedly bragged about being the only gangster from his generation still having people killed. Whether this was true or not, the fact that he was saying it shows how he used fear as a weapon. By maintaining a reputation for extreme violence, he could control people without actually having to hurt them most of the time. Big U's approach to reputation management was incredibly sophisticated. He understood that in the social media age, perception was often more important than reality. He carefully cultivated an image that combined legitimate community work with subtle displays of power and wealth. His Instagram account was a masterclass in psychological manipulation, charity events mixed with expensive cars, family photos alongside subtle gang references, community awards next to pictures with dangerous associates. The genius of this approach was that it created cognitive dissonance in people who dealt with him. How could someone who was doing so much good for the community also be involved in criminal activities? This confusion made it easier for Big U to manipulate people and harder for victims to seek help or report his activities to authorities. Big U also understood the power of social proof and peer pressure. When major artists and celebrities publicly associated with him, it sent a message to other potential targets that cooperation was not only expected but socially acceptable. If successful, respected figures were checking in with Big U, then it must be the normal thing to do. Big U's use of developing options as a front was perhaps the most cynical aspect of his alleged criminal enterprise. By genuinely helping some people while exploiting others, he created a shield of legitimacy that made him virtually untouchable for years. Who's going to investigate a charity that's feeding hungry families? Who's going to question a reformed gang member who's coaching youth football? The federal investigation revealed that Big U embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from developing options using donations meant for community programs to fund his alleged criminal activities. But the truly insidious part was how he used the legitimate good works of the organization to deflect criticism and investigation of his other activities. When people started asking questions about Big U's wealth or his associates' activities, he could always point to the charity work as evidence of his legitimate status. The food drives, youth programs, and community events weren't just cover. They were active weapons in his defense against law enforcement and community criticism. Big U also used the charity to recruit new members for his alleged criminal organization. Young men who came to developing options looking for help and guidance were sometimes drawn into criminal activities. The organization gave Big U access to vulnerable youth who were looking for father figures and economic opportunities, making them perfect targets for recruitment into his alleged criminal enterprise. The psychological impact of this betrayal cannot be overstated. Many young men genuinely looked up to Big U as a mentor and role model. When they discovered that he was allegedly using them for criminal purposes, it created deep trauma and mistrust that extended far beyond their individual experiences. Big U's connections in the entertainment industry weren't just about access. They were weapons he used to intimidate and control his alleged victims. When someone was considering whether to pay Big U's extortion demands, they had to consider not just the threat of street violence, but also the potential damage to their careers if Big U used his industry connections against them. Big U's relationship with figures like Suge Knight gave him credibility and access that most street criminals could never achieve. When he walked into industry meetings or events, he wasn't just another gang member. He was someone with legitimate connections and influence. This made his threats more credible and his protection more valuable. The entertainment industry's complicated relationship with street culture also worked in Big U's favor. Many industry figures were fascinated by authentic street stories and characters, but they lacked the knowledge to distinguish between genuine, reformed criminals and active predators. Big U exploited this fascination, using his authentic background and charismatic personality to build relationships with people who had no idea about his alleged criminal activities. Big U also understood how to use the media to his advantage. His appearances on podcasts and documentaries weren't just ego trips, they were strategic communications designed to send messages to potential victims and rivals. When he talked about the importance of checking in on these platforms, he was essentially advertising his extortion services to a national audience. One aspect of Big U's alleged criminal enterprise that sets it apart from traditional gang activities is how effectively he used modern technology and communication methods. The federal investigation revealed that Big U and his associates used encrypted messaging apps, social media platforms, and even podcast appearances to coordinate criminal activities and intimidate victims. Big U's social media presence was carefully managed to send subtle messages about his power and influence. Photos of expensive cars, jewelry, and cash were mixed with images from charity events and family gatherings. This created a complex narrative that was difficult for law enforcement to interpret but clear to people in the streets who understood the coded messages. The organization also allegedly used technology to track potential victims and gather intelligence about their movements and financial situations. Social media posts about travel plans, studio sessions, or business meetings could be used to plan extortion attempts or robberies. The same platforms that artists used to promote their careers were allegedly being monitored by Big U's organization for criminal opportunities. Big U's appearances on podcasts and YouTube shows served multiple purposes beyond just building his public image. These platforms allowed him to send messages to specific individuals without directly threatening them. A casual comment about the importance of checking in, or a story about what happened to people who didn't show proper respect, could serve as a warning to potential victims. What made Big U's alleged criminal enterprise so powerful was how he built a network of associates, allies, and subordinates who could operate independently while still serving his interests. This wasn't just a traditional gang structure. It was a sophisticated criminal ecosystem that could adapt to changing circumstances and opportunities. Big U's network included people at every level of the LA street hierarchy, from low-level gang members who could provide muscle and intimidation to high-level figures who could provide intelligence and political protection. He also cultivated relationships with people in legitimate businesses, security companies, recording studios, event promoters, who could provide information and access. The genius of this network structure was that it provided Big U with plausible deniability for most criminal activities. When someone was robbed or extorted, it could often be traced back to lower-level associates rather than Big U himself. This made it difficult for law enforcement to build cases against him and allowed him to maintain his public image as a reformed community leader. Big U also understood the importance of maintaining loyalty within his organization. He allegedly used a combination of financial incentives, fear, and genuine mentorship to keep his associates in line. People who were loyal to him were rewarded with money, protection, and opportunities. Those who betrayed him faced severe consequences. The network also provided Big U with early warning systems about law enforcement activities and potential threats from rivals. With associates throughout the LA gang structure and connections in legitimate businesses, he could often learn about investigations or planned actions before they happened. The beginning of the end for Big U came from within his own organization, and it started with a man whose street name perfectly predicted his eventual role in Big U's downfall. Loose Cannon, whose real name is T-Main Ashley Williams, was allegedly one of Big U's most trusted enforcers for years. According to the federal indictment, Loose Cannon carried out robberies, extortions, and other crimes on Big U's behalf, making him privy to some of the organization's most sensitive operations. But something went wrong between them, and the exact nature of their falling out reveals a lot about how Big U's organization operated. According to Loose Cannon's later statements, he started to realize that Big U was manipulating him and setting him up to take the fall for bigger crimes. The breaking point allegedly came when Loose Cannon noticed that Big U was keeping detailed records of the serial numbers of guns he provided to associates, information that could be used to implicate them in crimes if they ever turned against him. Loose Cannon also claimed that Big U's extortion methods were becoming increasingly sophisticated and dangerous. He described situations where they would rob dispensaries and other businesses, only to have the victims show up at Big U's house later to buy back their stolen property. This created a paper trail that made it look like legitimate business transactions, while actually being elaborate extortion schemes. The psychological manipulation that Loose Cannon described is particularly chilling. He claimed that Big U would send associates out on dangerous missions, then use their participation in these crimes as leverage to ensure their continued loyalty. It was a system designed to create mutual dependence and make it impossible for anyone to leave the organization without facing serious consequences. When Loose Cannon finally decided to break away from Big U, he didn't just leave quietly. He went public with explosive allegations that would eventually contribute to the federal investigation. His appearances on the No Jumper podcast in 2024 were like watching someone commit career suicide in real time, as he admitted to participating in serious crimes while implicating Big U in even worse activities. The most explosive allegation that Loose Cannon made was about a phone call he received from Big U on the day Nipsey Hussle was murdered. According to Loose Cannon, Big U called him and said that Nipsey had been shot, but when Loose Cannon immediately called Nipsey to check on him, Nipsey answered the phone and was fine. Then, approximately 30 minutes later, Nipsey was actually shot and killed. The implication of this story is absolutely devastating, that Big U had advanced knowledge of Nipsey's murder. Whether this story is true or not, the fact that Loose Cannon was willing to make this allegation publicly shows how completely his relationship with Big U had broken down. This wasn't just a business dispute. This was a former associate essentially accusing Big U of being involved in one of hip-hop's most tragic losses. Loose Cannon claimed that he even played a recording of this phone call during a podcast appearance, though the audio quality was so poor that many people questioned its authenticity. The fact that he was making these claims at all, however, was significant because it showed that people who had been close to Big U were now willing to speak out against him publicly. The timing of these revelations was also significant. Loose Cannon made these allegations in early 2024, just months before the federal indictment against Big U was unsealed. This suggests that his statements may have been part of a broader pattern of former associates cooperating with federal investigators. While Loose Cannon was making explosive allegations on podcasts, another controversial figure in the LA hip-hop scene was conducting his own campaign against Big U. Wack 100, who had his own complicated history with Big U, started using his platform to spread information about Big U's alleged crimes and to pressure law enforcement to take action. Wack 100's approach was more strategic than Loose Cannon's emotional outbursts. Instead of just making allegations, Wack was providing specific information about ongoing investigations and encouraging people with knowledge of Big U's crimes to come forward. He used his clubhouse shows and podcast appearances to create a drumbeat of pressure that made it increasingly difficult for Big U to maintain his public image. The relationship between Wack 100 and Big U had been deteriorating for years, with both men making subtle threats and accusations against each other. But Wack's campaign against Big U became more focused and intense after he apparently gained access to information about the Shawn Williams murder investigation. Wack's most significant contribution to Big U's downfall may have been his decision to publicize information about the federal investigation before arrests were made. In March 2024, Wack used his platforms to warn that federal agents were coming for Big U at the end of the month. This gave Big U advance warning about the investigation, but it also created public pressure that made it harder for him to escape justice. The murder of Shawn Williams in January 2021 was the crime that ultimately brought down Big U's alleged criminal enterprise. Williams was a 21-year-old aspiring rapper who had been coached by Big U in youth football and was trying to build a music career with Big U's help. According to the federal indictment, Big U allegedly murdered Williams in Las Vegas over a diss track and wasted studio time. What makes this case so shocking is the personal connection between Big U and Williams. This wasn't some rival gang member or business competitor. This was a young man that Big U had known since childhood, someone he had coached and mentored. Williams had even lived with Big U's family for a period during high school, making him almost like an adopted son. The federal indictment provides chilling details about the alleged murder. According to investigators, Big U drove to Las Vegas on his daughter's birthday to confront Williams about his lack of productivity in the studio and his alleged diss track. The indictment alleges that Big U then drove Williams to a remote location off Interstate 15, shot him multiple times in the head, and dumped his body in the desert. The investigation into Williams' murder revealed sophisticated evidence-gathering techniques by federal agents. They used cell phone data to track Big U's movements, surveillance footage to establish timelines, and DNA evidence found under Williams' fingernails to link Big U to the crime. The fact that Big U allegedly left his phone turned off during the time of the murder shows that he understood how technology could be used to track him, but he apparently didn't realize that investigators could still piece together his movements. The FBI investigation that eventually brought down Big U had been ongoing for years before the public became aware of it. Federal agents had been using wiretaps, surveillance, and financial investigations to build a comprehensive picture of Big U's alleged criminal enterprise since at least 2021. The investigation revealed the sophisticated nature of Big U's organization and the wide range of criminal activities they were allegedly involved in. The final indictment included charges for racketeering, murder, extortion, robbery, fraud, and money laundering, essentially every major category of organized crime. Federal investigators used a variety of techniques to gather evidence against Big U and his associates. They planted listening devices in locations where the organization was known to meet. They monitored phone calls and text messages, and they even used undercover agents to make drug and weapons purchases from organization members. The investigation also revealed the extent to which Big U had been using his legitimate businesses and charitable organizations to launder money and provide cover for criminal activities. Financial records showed that hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money meant for community programs had been diverted to personal use and criminal activities. Perhaps most damaging to Big U's case was the evidence that he had been using his media appearances and social media posts to intimidate witnesses and obstruct the investigation. Federal agents documented numerous instances where Big U made public statements that seemed designed to discourage people from cooperating with law enforcement. On March 17, 2025, the FBI launched Operation Drawdown. a coordinated effort to arrest Big U and his associates that involved hundreds of federal agents and local law enforcement officers. The name was a deliberate play on Big U's nickname, Draws, showing that federal agents had developed a personal investment in bringing down one of LA's most notorious figures. The operation was massive in scope, with simultaneous arrests taking place across Los Angeles and search warrants being executed at multiple locations. 19 people were indicted in total, including Big U, Loose Cannon, and several other Rolling 60s members. The charges included racketeering, murder, extortion, robbery, and fraud, essentially every major category of organized crime. The timing of the operation was carefully planned to maximize its impact and minimize the chances of key suspects escaping. Federal agents had been monitoring the organization's communications and activities for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. The fact that they were able to arrest most of the defendants simultaneously shows the level of coordination and planning that went into the operation. The media coverage of the arrests was extensive, with news outlets across the country reporting on the downfall of one of LA's most notorious gang leaders. The contrast between Big U's public image as a community leader and the serious criminal charges he was facing created a compelling narrative that captured public attention. When the indictments were unsealed, Big U was nowhere to be found. He had apparently been tipped off about the investigation and had gone into hiding. For several days, he was a fugitive, posting videos on social media claiming his innocence and saying he was being persecuted for helping his community. These videos revealed a man who was clearly under enormous stress but still trying to maintain his public image. Big U claimed that the charges against him were false and that he was being targeted because of his success in helping young people. He portrayed himself as a victim of a corrupt system that couldn't tolerate a black man who had overcome his past and was making a positive difference in his community. The content of these videos was particularly revealing because it showed how Big U viewed himself and his situation. Even facing life in prison for serious federal charges, he was still trying to manipulate public opinion and maintain his reputation as a reformed community leader. This suggests that his public persona wasn't just a calculated front. He may have genuinely believed in his own mythology. Big U also used these videos to send messages to his associates and potential witnesses. He warned people not to cooperate with federal investigators and suggested that anyone who testified against him would face consequences. These statements would later be used as evidence of witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. The surrender and legal strategy. Eventually, Big U turned himself in to federal authorities, ending his brief time as a fugitive. His surrender was carefully orchestrated by his legal team, who were trying to minimize the damage to his public image and create the best possible conditions for his defense. Big U's legal strategy appears to be focused on challenging the credibility of witnesses like Loose Cannon and disputing the federal government's characterization of his activities as organized crime. His lawyers are likely to argue that he was a legitimate community leader who may have made some mistakes, but was not the criminal mastermind described in the federal indictment. The defense will probably also focus on the positive work that Big U did through developing options and his other community activities. They'll argue that a man who genuinely helped thousands of young people and families couldn't be the cold-blooded criminal described by federal prosecutors. However, the evidence against Big U appears to be substantial. The federal indictment includes wiretapped conversations, financial records, DNA evidence, and testimony from multiple witnesses. The government's case seems to be built on years of careful investigation and documentation, making it difficult for the defense to challenge the core allegations. The arrest of Big U and his associates has had a profound impact on the South Central LA community that he claimed to serve. Many people who genuinely benefited from his community programs are struggling to reconcile the man they knew with the criminal described in the federal indictment. For the young men who were coached by Big U in youth football or helped by his charity programs, his arrest represents a devastating betrayal. Many of these individuals looked up to Big U as a father figure and role model, and learning about his alleged criminal activities has created deep trauma and confusion. The arrest has also created a power vacuum in the LA gang structure that could lead to increased violence as different factions compete for control. Big U's organization allegedly controlled significant territory and criminal activities, and his removal from the scene has created opportunities for rivals to expand their operations. The Big U case has broader implications for hip-hop culture and the music industry's relationship with street culture. For years, the industry has struggled with how to handle artists and industry figures who have connections to criminal activities. The Big U case shows how someone can use legitimate success and community work to hide serious criminal activities. The case also highlights the vulnerability of young artists who are trying to navigate the complex relationship between street credibility and commercial success. Many artists feel pressure to maintain connections to street culture to preserve their authenticity, but the Big U case shows how these connections can be exploited by predators. The extensive media coverage of the case has also raised questions about the role of podcasts and social media in both exposing and enabling criminal activities. While platforms like No Jumper helped bring attention to Big U's alleged crimes, they also provided him with a platform to intimidate witnesses and promote his extortion schemes. As we reach the end of this story, it's important to understand the true cost of Big U's alleged criminal empire. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about the systematic destruction of trust, opportunity, and hope in a community that desperately needed positive leadership. The financial cost is staggering. Federal investigators estimate that Big U's organization extorted millions of dollars from artists, athletes, and businesses over the years. But the human cost is even more devastating. Young artists who should have been focused on developing their talents were instead worried about paying street taxes and avoiding conflicts with gang politics. The psychological impact on the community cannot be overstated. Big U's alleged betrayal of the trust placed in him by young people and families has created deep trauma that will take years to heal. Many people who genuinely believed in his mission of helping the community now feel foolish and betrayed. The case also represents a broader failure of the systems that were supposed to provide oversight and accountability. How was Big U able to embezzle hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money without detection? How was he able to maintain his public image while allegedly running a criminal enterprise for years? As of now, Big U's case is still working its way through the federal court system. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges and maintains his innocence. His legal team is preparing what will likely be a lengthy and expensive defense against charges that could result in life in prison. The government's case appears to be strong, with extensive evidence including wiretap conversations, financial records, and witness testimony. However, federal prosecutors will still need to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and Big U's defense team will likely challenge every aspect of the government's evidence. The case is also likely to have implications for other figures in the LA hip-hop scene who may have been involved in similar activities. Federal investigators have indicated that their investigation is ongoing and additional charges against other individuals are possible. The Big U case offers several important lessons for the hip-hop community and the music industry as a whole. First, it shows the importance of due diligence when working with people who claim to provide protection or industry connections. Just because someone has a public reputation as a community leader doesn't mean they can be trusted. Second, the case highlights the need for better systems to protect young artists from exploitation. The music industry has a responsibility to provide safe environments for artists to develop their careers without having to navigate dangerous street politics or pay extortion fees. Third, the case shows the importance of speaking out against criminal activities even when it's dangerous to do so. The people who eventually came forward with information about Big U's alleged crimes played a crucial role in bringing him to justice, but it took years for them to find the courage to speak out. With Big U in federal custody, the LA hip-hop scene is entering a new era. The culture of fear and extortion that he allegedly created is beginning to break down, but it will take time for artists and industry figures to feel truly safe from retaliation. The case has also created opportunities for legitimate community leaders to step forward and fill the void left by Big U's arrest. There are many people in South Central LA who are genuinely committed to helping young people and reducing violence, and they now have a chance to build programs and organizations that aren't corrupted by criminal activities. The music industry also has an opportunity to develop better practices for working with artists who have connections to street culture. Instead of simply avoiding these artists or exploiting their stories for commercial gain, the industry can work to create safe spaces where authentic voices can be heard without putting anyone at risk. The story of Big U is ultimately a tragedy, not just for his alleged victims, but for the community that he could have genuinely helped if he had chosen a different path. He had the intelligence, charisma, and connections to make a real positive difference in South Central LA, but instead he allegedly used these gifts to prey on the very people he was supposed to protect. The case also serves as a reminder that the line between legitimate success and criminal activity can be thinner than we might think. Big U's ability to maintain his public image while allegedly running a criminal enterprise shows how sophisticated modern criminals can be and how important it is to look beyond surface appearances. As the legal process continues and more details about Big U's alleged activities come to light, the hip-hop community will need to grapple with some difficult questions about authenticity, street credibility, and the price of success. The Big U case shows that these issues are more complex and dangerous than many people realize. But perhaps most importantly, this story is a testament to the power of truth and justice. Despite Big U's alleged efforts to intimidate witnesses and obstruct investigations, the truth eventually came out. The people who suffered under his alleged reign of terror finally got their day in court, and the community he claimed to serve finally learned the truth about who he really was. That's the full story of how Big U allegedly turned the LA rap scene into his personal extortion empire. It's a story of betrayal, manipulation, and violence, but it's also a story of courage, justice, and the eventual triumph of truth over fear. Make sure you subscribe for more deep dives into hip-hop's most controversial stories, and let me know in the comments what you think about this case. Until next time, it's your boy Hip Hop History, and I'll see you in the next one.